Welcome to another episode of The Corner Booth, the official podcast of restaurantowner.com. Today, the restaurant industry is changing faster than ever. Learn from successful independent restaurant operators and other industry leaders as they share best practices that will help you engage your team, delight your guests, and grow your business.
And welcome everyone to another Corner Booth. I'm Chris Tripoli with restaurantowner.com. And today we're going to be talking about multiple unit concepts, the challenge of the opening, the operating, the management, and the growing when you've got not just multiple units, but multiple concepts. And to do that, we've got two interesting guests. They have been working partners for years. Before they became working partners, they worked together in other companies. So we're going to learn a lot about shared experience, roles and responsibilities of working partners, the management of multiple concepts, all from Jamie Adams and Leonardo Moura. Thank you very much, Jamie and Leonardo. They are partners working together with not one, not two, not three, but four successful restaurants. And they took time out to join us today. Hey guys, welcome to Corner Booth.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thanks for having us, Chris.
It's our pleasure. This is fun. I'm sure the listeners are going to get an awful lot of information on things that right now they're thinking about, either the development of a second concept, how to properly manage when you're growing. These are all the things that you've been excelling at. But before we jump into that, let's start at the beginning, just to let everyone know a little bit about yourselves. Maybe Jamie and Leonardo, if you wouldn't mind, take a minute or two and tell us about yourself. What got you interested in our business to begin with? What were your early influences before you met each other?
All right, I'll take it off.
If you go first.
Get going. I got into it through kind of my family. My mother and father were born and raised in New Orleans, and they settled here after the war. My father got out. My mom was a great cook, and my father loved to eat what mom cooked,
and why not?
Out. Right. So, growing up, eating great food, going out to dinner. And as soon as I was old enough to work, I got a job in a little restaurant, pizzeria, real close to our house. And I immediately kind of had this feeling like, wow, this is really cool. I was 12 and working as a busboy. And, years went on, and I went to work for this another little restaurant in our neighborhood called the Mad Italian. It was Philly cheesesteaks.
Oh, boy.
And the guys that founded it are still good friends of mine today. And then this was 1978 when I went to work for them. And I didn't know much about the business, but I knew that I absolutely loved it. And these guys were just incredible hospitality agents. I mean, that was their whole thing. Cook good food, but it's got to be great hospitality. And so I worked for them for a good while. And then I got picked up everything and went to Italy to try to work in restaurants over there, which I ended up staying for about 5 years. And I worked in some great places. And then I came back in 1990, and I went to work for this pretty big company here in Atlanta called Buckhead Life Restaurant Group.
Sure. So you've got a couple of really cool influences. Well, I mean, first off, starting out in New Orleans, not a bad food city to start out in. That's just wonderful. And it's kind of cool when your initial influences come from good home cooking. And, so mom's cooking made sense. And, we hear more and more about people who had a very early, like 12 or 13 experience, and then they wind up turning into tremendously successful later. So, another vote for early work seems to be okay.
We're on that.
I tell people all the time that, particularly like in the chef category, because I'm the chef side of things, if you don't really love to eat, and if you don't have that deep-seated love for, what you're preparing and eating, most importantly, you're never going to make it. If you can go through the motions of producing the stuff, there's a little bit of soul left out of that if you're not somebody that really loves to eat. And, we obviously love to eat.
Well, how about you, Leonardo? How did you get the initial itch?
Well, I stumbled upon it, but I must say that my family always had big big gatherings, end of the year or Christmas, and that whole social aspect of it, I've always been drawn to it. And even when I went to university in Brazil, I thought the best part of it, it wasn't going to class. It was going to socialize with all the friends on the square and chit chat. And that to me has always been a big part of my love to restaurants. But when I say stumble is in when I moved here to the States, and I do like to state as a joke that I'm from the deep, deep South.
Well, I will give you that. Yeah, Brazil counts.
Thank you. That would count, wouldn't it? So when I started, when I came here, my first job that I had was making pizzas for Pizza Hut. And I thought it was super cool. I've never seen a whole conveyor belt, all that stuff that they had, the pan pizza and all the other stuff. I thought it was awesome. And that's how I started. And then I almost worked for all of them. Papa John's, I worked besides Domino's. Papa John's, that was a chain here from Chicago that was brand new, Donato's. I worked for them. And then one of my managers said, you know what? I think you should try serving. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm leaving being a manager for Pizza Hut, and I'm going to become a server. And this friend of mine said, why don't you come work with me as a busser at a French restaurant? And I said, you know what? I think that may be a good idea. And I tried. My biggest issue was I spoke very little English. And as a matter of fact, when I was working for Pizza Hut, I have a funny story, which is the guy takes me in the cooler and says, organize, do whatever. 30 minutes later, he comes back, I'm still there. And I told him the whole entire time, okay, I didn't understand anything he said. I thought it was hilarious at the time. But anyway, so working as a busser, one day this restaurant owner, his name was Guy, and he was owner of Violet here in Atlanta. He was very short on servers. And he put me up there, and he just said to me, just don't mess up, man. He said in different words, called me a couple different names, but just told me, do not mess up. Just, I need you to serve today. And that's when I started serving. From there, I met another friend that introduced me to the same company that Jamie was working for prior, and so was I. I actually got to meet him. He was a cook coming into the restaurant, but he wasn't a cook. He was a chef prior that was going to the concept as a chef, but I didn't know. I thought he was just a cook in the kitchen. I passed by and say, hey man, you have a fish scale on your head. And it all started from there. But that's how I end up on the restaurant business. It was pure like stumble upon and love at first sight, because I love the social aspect, being around people and talking to them and talking to the guys in the back of the house, the dishwashers, learning about people. I just loved it. So, and here I am.
So then,
couldn't stop
you're
it.
in Atlanta now. How do you two get together then?
How did we get together? Well, so he was referring to, I had left Buckhead Life, Veni Vidi Vici in specific, which was, one of the Italian places they had. And I opened my own business with a friend from high school, and it turned out to be a disaster, and I lost most of everything, except for the fact that I met my wife, now wife, and that was great. But so I had come back to work, and our old boss wanted me to just work at the Greek place for a few months before going back to my old job at Veni Vidi Vici. And so I got to meet Leo when I was working at the Greek place, because he was a server and he didn't know what was going on. And then later on, I go back to Veni Vidi Vici, and then he ends up coming to Veni Vidi Vici as an assistant manager. And so we kind of were together for a number of years after that, not always in the same restaurant, but the last 12 years of our stay there, we were working together.
Wow.
Correct.
Excellent. And so you worked together, and obviously the Buckhead Dining Group, very successful with multiple concepts.
Correct.
Were you always of mind that maybe you wanted to step out again, try ownership? And Leonardo, was that something in the back of your mind too, that you were going to, one day want to kind of develop your own idea into a restaurant business?
Well, so after years of working at Veni Veni Vici, I actually left. And I was working at Veni Vici preaching and different concepts all at various time. And I can't even, if you were to ask me, what was your timeline? I have no clue. But when I was at Veni Veni Vici, I left. I was trying to purchase an IHOP. And that just fell through. It was very difficult. To me, it was very difficult, 24 hours. And it was not a good fit. And it's all in boxes, right? You cannot be creative. Is what the corporate office tells you, that's what it is. And you cannot make anything that is beyond those boxes. You got to work on a box. That was not good for me.
Right.
So I went back to Veni Veni Vici, and our former boss had this ritual. Every time that he gave you your first paycheck, he would personally give it to you in your hand, face to face. So it would maybe take a month, but you got your check. So we would go, so I went up there to get my check, and he puts the check right in front of me, and I go to grab it, and he just tugs it. And he says, "What about Veni Veni Vici?" And I say, "What about I don't? Since I just got off of a very awful experience, and I really don't want to do this." And he said, "Maybe you ought to consider." I said, "Okay, sir, I'll do that." And he said, "Your next check, you need to come back here again." I say, "Okay, then." So I figured that he wanted to talk about that. So I went on my way and gave a little bit of a thought to it. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. And a couple weeks later, he calls me to another paycheck cycle. I get in there, and he thugs the check again. I say, "I've seen that trick before." And he say, "Have you given any thought to it?" I say, "Sir, I have." I say, "But I'm not sure I want to, get into another situation." And he said, you ought to consider. So I went back to the restaurant, to Veni Veni Vici. I went all the way in the back in the office, because that's where the Jamie's office was at. I said, "Listen, Jamie asked me if I'd like to purchase Veni Vici, and the only way I could do it is if you were my business partner." And Jamie said, "Yeah, I don't know. Left a pretty bad taste in my mouth. I don't know if I want to do that." I think it wasn't 3 days later, he said, "Maybe I'll give it a try."
Yeah.
But the biggest issue there was that the way his lease ran, we couldn't purchase. Then he had set off the fire. So to answer your question, not.
What happened there, Jamie?
What happened is that, one thing that Leo didn't mention is that Pano had talked to me, because I started a little bit before he did at Veni Veni Vici, and he had asked me, "You want to buy the restaurant?" I said, "Absolutely not. I just got out of losing everything." And then, so when then Leo came along, and we decided, yeah, let's do it. And there was very good faith on both sides of it, but it just was going to be impossible to get it because of the complexity of their business and their whole structure. And so he knew also that we would be out looking, and he was extraordinarily helpful to us to go out on our own, and he's been supporting us ever since. And he helped us out in a lot of critical ways that we couldn't have done it without him. Namely, the concept.
Yeah.
Pano said, "So what's your concept?" And we said, "Well, it's an Italian restaurant, Pano. That's a concept." And he goes, "That's not a concept." And we're just scratching our heads thinking, okay, the old man's pretty smart and he's done great. And I had this evening in the restaurant where a lady wanted the pasta special from the day before, but we didn't have any. So I just made one. I ran back, I got the stuff and managed to make it. And then the light came on. The concept is we make all of our pasta out in the dining room during service, not, somebody in the back making pasta in the refrigerator then taking it out. And that's kind of how the concept got started.
And what a good question for him to pose, because you have to be able to define a concept. And if it's just something as broad as, like you said at first, I think we're going to do an Italian restaurant. What a good thing to hear. And I'm sure the listeners are making a note of that. Hey, if I'm opening up a new place, I've got to define my concept. Yeah, and so something just as broad as I think I'll cook steaks, or I'm going to do an Italian restaurant, that's not a concept. Until you define that point of difference, what is it that the customer is going to know, or what are they going to think of when they hear that name? And it could be a particular way of service, could be a particular seasonal menu, maybe it could be something about design, but it has to be particular. So what was the first of your four concepts? Which one did you guys wind up doing first?
That was the Italian place, because that's where, I'd spent so much time there, and that's what I'd, been just involved with for the last, almost 20 years. And so that was kind of an easy one. And then the next one that came along as by accident. Leo and I have always kind of lived pretty close to one another for not on purpose, but it just kind of happened. But so one day Leo says to me, I saw this coolest place, and we had been talking about maybe doing some kind of New Orleans thing.
Okay.
And Leo said, I got the space. And I said, great. Well, and the following weekend, I went out, and Leo's, not he's not the one that's going to say, it's right at Peachtree and Claremont. He goes, there's a gas station and there's a Walmart, and then there's okay, well, that could describe about 25 different places.
Get around the bus like that, chef.
I love it. As long as there's a restaurant on the corner, then we know how to give direction.
So the week later, I went to the same place he had gone to, but I didn't know. And I called Leo. I said, no, Leo, you think you found the right place. I found the coolest place in the world. And it's this freestanding building, small, and we kind of took it from there. It ended up taking almost a year before we got into it because somebody else had taken it, because we were just not ready to decide. And then they came back to us, and that's when we launched our New Orleans inspired place called La Garde.
Excellent. So you already had one. You had your Italian place. What was it called?
It was the Italian place is Il Giallo. Giallo.
Yep. So Il Giallo came first, and that's operating. And now you're going to jump in and do more of your New Orleans. These are full service, I imagine. Lunches.
Yes, casual, but full service. Yeah.
Yeah. And private party rooms and everything. About how big are these places?
No, that's the first one has private dining. The second one is 2,500 square feet. Plus about 2,000 square feet of patio, but it's no private dining there.
Okay.
No, not much there. We do a lot at the Italian place.
Yeah, the Ujal is 8,200 square feet, so it's big, huge, grande.
Yeah, it's big.
Now that's big. 8,200 square feet for your first restaurant. Wow.
Yeah, we didn't know. It looked right. It looked the right size. Had a bunch of cubicles, and it looked perfect. And when they took all the walls down, all the offices down, because it was a real estate spot, we're like, wow, what did we get ourselves into?
So can you kind of continue through the process? So you find a place, you've got your concept in mind. How do you then turn it into reality with taking this big space and coming up with the design that you want? And how do you manage the timeline to make sure that you've got, enough budget to see yourself through until you can open the door?
Can you go on that one, Chef?
Yeah.
Right.
I had, I have some very close friends that I met a long time ago, and it's a long story we don't need to go into, but turns out that we had thought about a couple of different designers who would, big name people, and we just didn't get the right, fuzzy feeling about going with them for such exorbitant kind of money. And then my friend said to me, Jamie, my wife will design your restaurant. And little did I realize that she was a designer. We were just very social over the course of about 20 years, but never really thought about, her being a designer. And so she did a work of magic of realizing the whole design, and because it was a complicated building, it's got some weird wasn't a square box or a rectangle. Had all sorts of weird angles. And so she got that together, and we managed to get that place. We had a couple of investors come in. They comprise 40% of what, we have at Jalo at this point. And so we borrowed the rest of the money, and we had some money of our own, and that's how we got it off the ground. And we did have a lot of help from some local chefs and other restaurant, chefs that have gone into their own businesses. Kevin Rathbun, he's a pretty well-known guy. He's a good friend of ours. And a few other people that were just helping us along with getting business plans and getting ideas of, what to, how to go through this whole business part.
Sure.
You're good at restauranting, but, putting the deal together was a challenge, but it was, we had the right people in our sphere to help us get through it all.
Great point. Because, I don't think we can say that enough. Our industry is known for people willing to help one another. We learn from one another. And so it's nice. You had friends in the industry to rely on and help pick some pointers. That's the first thing that I'm getting out of that. And then the second one that you meant is something that we hear from time to time again too. Hey, if we're restaurant operators, we might really, really know the operation of the restaurant, but that doesn't mean we know the ideal of design, budgeting, certainly structuring, and fundraising. So, work with people who specialize in the industry and get advice. Sounds like a pretty good plan to follow.
I would say that also, don't be afraid of asking your peers for help. They are actually much more willing to give you advice and very open. Like, for instance, Jamie mentioned Kevin Rathbun. I went to Doug Turbish, which is another great restaurateur here in Atlanta, and he gave me his business plan. He gave me his Excel spreadsheet with all the information, Then I asked Chris Hall, that is another big restaurateur here. He pretty much went through his P&L and told me, this is how you read a P&L. This is what you got to be looking for. So we had tremendous help. So do not be shy of asking your peers. And I think in the restaurant business, we feel that we always owe each other, to help and be courteous about someone else. And we also don't, and people be impressed that we actually, or other restaurateurs don't view each other as a competition, much more as a complement to what they're doing. And the more that is around, that is more things for these people to come in and enjoy that specific spot. So I highly recommend ask for advice. Don't be shy.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so cool. So we're only halfway there. You guys are successful with 4 different concepts. You started with the Italian, now you do a full service New Orleans. How does it work? How did your roles and responsibilities change when, say, you had 2? And you guys are looking at each other as you're both owners, your business partners. How do you decide how we're going to operate and what kind of structure do we need beneath us in order to be able to do what we do well and be successful in a business?
On my part, I think that when you are at 2 and it's 2 business partners, now you have each one of the partners can actually help in one of the business. And but once you start stretching through 3 and 4, it becomes a little bit more complicated. And then you got to have a little bit more structure than before. Would you agree with that, Chef?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the one thing that we did have in our favor at that time when we're launching Lagarde was we had a very strong chef, because we knew we were going to be doing Lagarde, and we brought this guy in. We were very good friends. We've known each other for a long time, and it was just a perfect fit. And he was very good at kind of freeing us up, and with complete faith that Gary would be able to take care of everything in the Italian place. We had a good general manager, but Gary was a very strong force, and that freed us up to be able to get Lagarde going. And then when it came to the next one really was G's Pizza. which, the place is so big during the pandemic, we didn't have enough servers to cover anything. So we put a corner, pizzeria inside the restaurant. It's like a restaurant within a restaurant. And
G's Pizza started out as, a large full service restaurant, and then also did a little corner pizzeria in it.
yeah, we just, the dining room.
So
was
you
big,
Jello.
The space was so big at El Giallo that we were able to just move we had some movable walls that we had used for various and sundry things that sort of, tucked a little corner away and put a pizza oven and a counter, and there's a little outdoor seating, and there's, maybe 10, 15 seats in the little speakeasy pizzeria. And that was all pretty easy. And we had another guy who I knew very well that was a great pizzaiolo. And, we've been at it for almost 3.5, 4 years now.
So that's interesting. So you're able to do that. Your third concept was basically just going back into the first concept and create something within it. Correct. That makes great sense.
Yeah, that was one of those pivots we had to make to try to get through the pandemic, and it did pretty well.
And now that the pandemic is long gone, do you find that because of the changing customer behavior and the want for third-party delivery, curbside pickup, et cetera, that this is just continuing? Not only was it a wise idea back then, maybe just to have something to do, but now it might be something that's going to just go on forever.
Yeah, the delivery thing is still huge. I think about 20% of our business at the pizza is delivered. Around 70% of the people are eating in house, and it goes back and forth. It just kind of goes along with school seasons and all that kind of stuff. So it's been it is here to stay, that whole delivery thing. And it's for better or for worse. Because sometimes the labor pool out there is really difficult. For drivers, from cooks to servers, they're just harder and harder to find people that really want to stay on task and love what they're doing. They do it because they kind of have to, and that makes it a little bit more difficult. And we haven't had a whole lot of trouble with the delivery stuff, but when we do, it's usually a whopper. Like, I never got my pizza. I never got my spaghetti. And I've driven to people's houses before, to fix it, and that's that's what we got to do
many times.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a good point. That for every advantage there seems to be a disadvantage. The idea of people wanting the convenience of either carside pickup, delivery, online ordering, third party, all of this. Years ago, you remember, because you guys have been in the industry for a long time. This was really restricted. The idea of eating at home or calling out was maybe for our favorite little Chinese restaurant in the neighborhood, or a pizza once in a while.
Yeah.
Now it's everything. It's people we kind of want what we want, but we also kind of want the convenience. So casual restaurants, burgers, Greek guys are boxing up their heroes. I can see, you're getting asked to do all kinds of pastas, and yet they want it to still be either delivered or pickup. So it does create a challenge. How have you responded, say, to the challenge in terms of packaging? Also, that kind of brings us into technology controls. How are you handling these orders? Because there seems to be a lot of movement into going into use of technology, even some AI for order taking. Is this something that's on your radar?
The AI part of it, which was we used a little bit for answering phones, we backed right out of it because it seems like a great idea, but it just falls short. And that is a lot of things that the guest does not like about it, and they don't even know what it is, but I think is a lack of insincerity, from the AI part, which is, it's a machine, so should not have any really feelings. But I think people miss that. So we backed right out of that one. although it seems very convenient, not a good one. When it comes down to go orders, we go through our POS system. I highly recommend to leave things together when it comes down to that. I don't think you should buy the entire package. We use Toast as our POS. There are things that I love about them, and there are things that I absolutely will say that I despise as well. And not everything is, as you can use as integration because it doesn't work well. We use Triple Seat for our private dining or events coordination. We use a totally, for marketing, we use a totally different, we use Kajabi. For website, we use GoDaddy and WordPress. So that is a lot of other technology that you cannot just harvest from one. And also when things break in one, you're down on every single thing. So you got to be very careful about that. And then AI is very helpful on creating content for email blasts or helping you out with the subject line that you just cannot think about it, or little things that helps. Or if you need a code for WordPress, you can get through AI. But I don't rely 100% on it at all times, because it makes tremendous mistakes. And if you don't read, like the other day, Jamie called me and say, hey, somebody just told me that you put August 16th, but it says it's a Friday. And I was like, oh, it's a Saturday. Clearly it's a Saturday, it's August 16th. And, but because I was cycling that through the AI made a mistake, which I cannot blame on it because I was the one putting it, therefore it was my mistake. So,
boy.
So we use technology, but you got to use with caution, and don't put all your eggs in one basket, because that is I've done that before. That is a mistake.
Got it.
I will say that Leo's spelling got really, really highly improved with the advent of AI.
So is my grammar.
Like Leo spelling everything right now all of a sudden.
So is my grammar. It's phenomenal.
I love it. Okay, so we haven't talked about Antoinette. Is that the fourth restaurant? And when did it come online? What type of concept is it now? Tell me a little bit about how you found that location. What's its size?
It was a trap, Chris.
I'll
Just
start
kidding.
here, Leo.
I'll let
You
Jamie
finish.
talk about it.
So we had so much success with Lagarde in Chambly, which is what we call it. It's inside the perimeter, and it's in a very good location. And so we decided to replicate Lagarde up in a northern suburb of Atlanta, which is just outside of Alpharetta. And so we opened it up as Lagarde, and that was 2023. So that's when it opened. Yeah.
I think so.
And so we gave it a year, and it just was the absolute wrong thing for the area. And we got the idea to transform it into a white tablecloth French restaurant because there was nothing like that up there.
Oh.
And, a very wealthy, demographic up there, but not quite as concentrated. Population concentration was a little different. So,
yeah.
And once we turned it into the French place, it took it a minute, but it's really taken, picking up speed very well now because, the food is good, the service is good, and it's small enough to be able to, we don't have to have a huge staff.
Good.
We have, it's a great kitchen, and, we're really starting to connect with a lot of people up there. So we made a pretty big mistake, in the second one. And I don't think we read the demographic properly. If everything would have been the same as the first one, and the density of the population of apartments, young people with families, not everybody's got to be wealthy. Everybody's got to want to go out and have a little, our little casual New Orleans place. It just, that demographic was completely different up in that area. So now we managed to shift.
Yeah, and also Lagarde is a much more. It's a bigger machine. You know, we make every single thing from scratch, all the sauces, everything. So, and we still do the same thing with La Antoinette, but it's a much bigger menu than La Antoinette, and that it required a lot of people to execute. Where La Antoinette, we have maybe 25% of the amount of people that we had at Lagarde to execute the menu. So and the service. So it's very high end, but still it doesn't take as many people as Lagarde does.
Sure. Your evenings only, and it sounds like you've
Correct.
got obviously a higher per person check average, but there's more seasonal menuing and not as many items on the menu at a time. So I can see what
Correct.
you mean. You're playing to the crowd better, and it is relatively easier to run too. Makes sense.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's a really good story of reality too. I really appreciate you sharing that. We don't always make right decisions. So you went out to a suburb, you stubbed your toe because you really thought Lagarde, which was really working well, was going to work there. You learned really
Mhm.
quickly, maybe not, but obviously it was a good location and the demographics seemed to be good just for a different concept. So you flipped it. So yeah, my hat's off to you. It's a good recovery. Now you've got a whole new concept to manage to build some value in and another brand to perhaps grow that, again, you wouldn't have had, if the initial plan worked.
That's right.
Correct. It's a great concept with is just it was the right thing for the area, and there was some other concepts that opened up around us that else didn't make it because it was not right for the area. And I think this one is just a home run. Our sales are just roaring. We have a great offer there. We do ribeyes and fries, plus mini baguette and salad for $49, which is a great deal. And it just has taken off. It's been like an incredible ride.
God, no kidding. That does sound like great value. A
Yeah.
good steak, Fritz, and
Hmm.
Yeah.
and you're doing $49. Good for
Yeah.
you.
And let's not forget the unlimited part.
Yeah, I forgot that part.
You eat your steak, and if you want more, you get it.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. Sounds crazy. And it is crazy, but I'll be if it doesn't work. It brought it brought in a huge amount of attention. And then everybody that was coming in for unlimited steak at $49, they look around like, wow, this is a cool place. And we can get Dover sole and we can get,
Sure.
beef bourguignon and we can get all this French onion soup. And so it was a marketing thing, and it really just was a complete hole in one.
No kidding. I don't know. That's a tremendous thing. And I'd love to have you talk a little bit more about how you guys decide to do marketing for not just new guests, but to retain current guests. Because the example you just gave, I've heard from other people where they say they try to lead with their food. If they're going to market, they want to market a core item, something about, the food that stands out and try to market around that. And is that your philosophy? Because it sounds like that's kind of what you did.
Yeah, I mean, it was Leo saw, like, was it a place in New York, Leo, that you saw, or was it
That was actually one of our general managers, Jesse, that told me about this restaurant in France because I was getting ready to go
oh,
to
that's right.
France.
Yeah.
And he said, there is another restaurant in New York that does this steak and frites, and it's all you can eat. And I said, well, that's all good. I say, but we have other things on the menu. And I said, what about if we just do the steak and frites plus all the other stuff that we have? And that worked out pretty well because so not everybody eats steak. So if somebody
Yeah,
wants something else, they can have something else. Just not unlimited, only the steak.
yeah. But it worked, and our choices were limited. We needed to make it, work. We had it was just me and Leo and a bank loan, so there were no investors. There was no, bunch of money laying around somewhere to help us through the hard times. So we had to make the flip and get it going, and we did.
Excellent. That's exactly right. So now here we are. You've got really multiple concepts, all in or around the Atlanta area. So that's got to give you some convenience in the way you can go and be attentive to the day-to-day business. But when you two sit and look at each other and say, where do we want to be? What's next for this growing business partnership? How do you see the next, 5 to 10 years playing out for you?
That's a good question. We are coming towards the end of our lease at the Italian place.
Okay.
And, we're considering exercising our option. We're looking to maybe consolidate the companies and get rid of, buy out our partners, which there's only three. And it's not it doesn't represent a huge amount, like I was saying earlier. And then, we don't love our landlord. And they were pretty rough with us during the pandemic times, and they're just not the kind of people that we really like to be around and work with very much, because there's no working with them. They would just do what they say. And so we'll probably do another, maybe another sort of Italian, more casual, at some point. We've been looking at some stuff, a couple of years out. We do need to build a little bit more strength in our culinary group. I mean, up at Lagarde, that we got great strength. At L'Antoinette, we have a tremendous amount of strength. Giallo is a little bit weaker, because now, it's depending on me a little bit more than I would really like. And Leo and I would like to be able to not have to cover people all the time, so we could actually be in the midst of everything without the responsibility of carrying out, all of the service stuff, which takes your mind off of the bigger things and the next things and all that kind of stuff. So that's where we're trying to get.
Well, it sounds like a pretty good plan. Stay in the market area, serving the guests that obviously been serving you well. The idea of simplification, and if that means that you can handle some of the refinancing or taking out of partners, it's a great step. Building up the team, whether it's culinary or ops, before you then step out and do your next concept. Sounds like a good few years.
Yeah, I believe that as we strengthen our core, it will kind of push towards the outside, and things will really get going. Giallo is a tremendous concept. So is Lagarde. G's was a great addition, and La Antoinette was surprising to us, the success that we had with that one in a short period of time. Stumbling was awesome. We needed that. We needed to stumble to really regroup. James and I lost a lot of nights of sleep, but at the same time, it got us where we are. And it is, as we get our core really, really strong, I think we have an opportunity to expand that next concept that Jamie was talking about, pretty soon. So, and soon means 2-3 years.
Yeah, because it takes a while to you got to design it. You got to come up. You got to get the concept. You got to get all of that stuff. And we've seen other people take possession of a spot, and they had an idea, and then we don't have a construction company yet. We don't have full design yet. We don't have. So it's like we're the next
Permits.
2 years is getting everything planned out, and then once we're planned, we learned that with Lagarde was a little bit of a difficult build, little architecture issues that caused us some delays. We built the Lagarde up in Milton in 4 months. We knew the concept, built it fast, got it open fast, and so being prepared is everything, because money can just go flying away real fast if you don't have a plan.
Well, and these are all really, really good points that I know our listeners are taking note of that, preparation seems to be the answer to everything. And a short period of time sounds like a year if you're going to do things right. To design, to plan, you got to get a permit, you got to build, equip. Then you've got all the soft, cost inventory, training, yada, yada,
Yeah.
yada. So, to hear you say that really helps. I think people realize. I love when you referred to how you were able to do that second Lagarde and do it quickly, but quickly meant it was still a 4-month build out. So when some people pop up once in a while and think they're going to do the whole thing, 4 to 5 months, idea to opening day, they're really going to need to listen to the lessons that you've shared with us today.
Well, living it teaches very well.
Yep. Definitely
Well,
does.
we've had a great time today listening to two that have lived it and lived it well. You've learned from stumbling. It seems like you recouped stronger. You've got a good team, good concepts, a market behind you. So I congratulate you for the success you've had to date and wish you continued success. Can't wait to see how things unfold with your next few years of planning and what's going to be the next concept on the horizon. Leo, Jamie, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. We're going to have to wrap up now. Everybody, if you're in the Atlanta area, it sounds like you've got some really good concepts to choose from. If not, well, I guess we're just going to have to wait until maybe someday you come to a neighborhood close to us.
Sounds good.
Thank you
Yes,
so much.
and,
And for everyone else, listen, go have a great shift, and hopefully we'll meet up again on a corner booth real soon. Take care.
Awesome.
Getting off.
Thank you for joining us on the Corner Booth. We'll be back next Tuesday with more inspiration, insights, and industry best practices to help you engage your team, delight your guests, and grow your business.